I recently received an email from April, and she was confused as to why she's upset, her stomach is upset when she's racing. She happens to be a runner. Her focus tends to be at the 10K level, and on this particular email, she was racing a half marathon at an intensity that she thought was low enough, which would allow her to eat foods a little bit more complex. Now, if you're new to this, let me educate you a little bit. There's an inverse relationship between food complexity and intensity. Inverse relationship. So if you're going to be taking the intensity high, the food complexity needs to be relatively low. If you look at, like in this case, in the running market or in the triathlon market, this is where you see the proliferation of energy gels, energy blocks. Because as the intensity goes up, the body's ability to convert that food when necessary into energy, it has to be as simplistic as possible. I put a product together known as Energy Fuel, and we take that to all new levels because we change the complexity of the carbohydrate molecule, and then we add extra electrolytes based on, if we know the product's going to be used at a high intensity, we add a lactic acid buffer, and we make the carbohydrate a little bit easier to convert. There's an entire science behind it. In April's question, her frustration was she got nauseous because she thought that she could eat foods that are a little bit more complex. I have her permission to share with you, she tried eating an Uncrustable, a peanut butter and jelly, during her race because she was racing at a heart rate zone that she perceived was low enough. We did some research and found out that the heart rate zone was too high for the duration of the race. The heart rate was too high, not so much for the race, but rather for the food that she was taking in. So I hope that you'll be watching this video before it becomes a problem. Maybe you've had the same thing happen to you. Hopefully this brings a little bit more clarity. There's always an inverse relationship. If you're going to be keeping the heart rate down in zone 2, you can eat foods a little bit more complex than if you're in zones 3 or 4. Very important that you train with accurate heart rate zones. It's important that you test these food items. Just because I'm here telling you that as the intensity goes up, the food complexity goes down, you need to run it through your own field testing. Please don't pay attention to what your buddies are doing. Just because it works for them does not always mean it's going to work for you, and vice versa. So please be open-minded to that as well. But the takeaway from this video is she was getting sick to her stomach because the intensity level was too high for the complexity of the food that she was taking in. With our endurance athletes, what we do is if the heart rate is low enough, we do use things like almond butter and honey on very light bread. Okay, so that way we get the fat and the protein that satisfies hunger. We get a little bit more complex carbohydrates, but that's because we know the heart rate is low. Like with our athletes, particularly at the Ironman distance, we always negative split the bike. We always try to be faster the second half. So we can eat foods a little bit more complex for the first 50 or 60 miles, and then the next 35, 40, because the bike rides 112 miles at Ironman, the second half of the bike, we are going to bring the intensity up so the food sources start to become a little bit more simplistic, predominantly energy fuel, okay? So thank you so much, April, for the question. If you happen to have a question, remember, my #1 goal in these videos are to answer your frustrations. Send them to me. contact@coachrob.com. If you're more comfortable and want to leave a message below, I'll do everything I can to get back to your comment here as well. I want to thank you so much for watching the video, and we will look forward to seeing you again soon.